My son-in-law sold his house without telling my daughter. And now his whole family is standing in my driveway with suitcases. And my rose bushes are the only thing I have left of my husband. That was the moment I realized my quiet life was over. I remember the morning clearly because the air was heavy with the smell of rain that hadn't come yet. I was on my knees in the garden, pulling weeds from around the rose bushes. My hands were covered in dirt, and my knees ached from the damp ground. The roses were in full bloom. Red ones, the ones my husband planted the spring before he died. He said red roses were fighters, that they survived everything. I kept them alive through droughts and frosts, and the terrible the aphids came. I watered them with a bucket I ride from the kitchen because the garden hose had a leak I never got around to fixing. I was 79 years old, and I had learned to live with small imperfections. Leaky hoses, creaky floors, a roof that dripped in the back corner during heavy storms. These were the things I accepted. What I had not accepted was that my daughter's husband had destroyed their family's future and brought the wreckage to my front door. The phone rang at 4 in the afternoon. I remember the time because the sun was low and gold, and I was thinking about making tea. I wiped my hands on my apron and went inside. The phone was on the kitchen counter, next to the fruit bowl that held 3 apples and a banana that was turning brown. I picked it up and heard my daughter's voice. It was shaking. That was the first sign something was terribly wrong. Emily is a calm woman. She has always been calm, even as a child. She never cried over scraped knees or lost toys. She was the kind of child who would fall off her bicycle and get right back up without a sound. So when I heard her voice trembling on the phone, I knew the world had shifted. Mom, I need to tell you something. Mark did something. He sold the house. I sat down on the kitchen chair. The wood creaked under me. I had bought that chair at a garage sale 30 years ago with Richard, and we had refinished it together. I could still smell the varnish we used. I could still see his hand smoothing the surface. That was what I thought about while my daughter told me my son-in-law had destroyed their lives. He sold it to clear his brother's gambling debt and his sister's medical bills from the car accident last year. He didn't tell me, Mom. He just did it. He signed the papers and took the money, and now we have 30 days to move out. Her voice broke. I heard my granddaughter crying in the background. Lily. She was 7 years old and she had a voice like a little bird. She was crying the way children cry when they do not understand what is happening but know it is bad. I closed my eyes. I could picture the house. It was a modest house, a 2-bedroom bungalow with a small yard and a tire swing on the oak tree. Lily loved that tire swing. She would push herself high and laugh until she ran out of breath. Emily had painted the kitchen yellow because she said it made her happy. Mark had built a bookshelf in the living room, slightly crooked but sturdy. They had made a home there. A small, imperfect, loving home. And my son-in-law had sold it out from under them without a word. He had taken their stability and traded it for debt that was never his to begin with. Where are you now? I asked. I kept my voice calm. I had learned to be calm because screaming never solved anything. Richard used to say that a calm voice was the strongest weapon a woman had. I had not always believed him, but I had come to understand it as I aged. At a motel, Emily said. We checked in an hour ago. Mark is here. His whole family is here. His mother, his father, his brother, his sister, her 3 kids. They all showed up this morning with suitcases and blankets and boxes. They said they had nowhere else to go. They said they were coming with us. I felt something cold settle in my chest. It was not anger. It was something heavier. Something that felt like inevitability. My daughter had married a man with a big heart. That was what I had told myself at the wedding. I had watched them exchange vows and I had thought, he is a good man. He loves her. He will protect her. I had been wrong. He loved her, yes, but he loved everyone else too. He loved his brother who gambled. He loved his sister who made bad decisions. He loved his mother who had never worked a day in her life and expected everything to be handed to her. He loved them all and he could not say no. That was the disease that had infected my family. A man who could not say no. Emily was still talking. I heard her through the haze. Mom, I don't know what to do. We have nowhere to go. Mark says we'll figure something out, but we have no money and no time. The kids are hungry. Lily is SCA red. Mom, I'm SCA red. I looked at my house. It was too big for one woman. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with a breakfast nook and a dining room that seated 8. I rattled around in it like a dried pea in a can, as my mother used to say. But it was mine. Paid off. Owned outright. Richa Road and I had bought it in Yijochiba for $42,000 Rs. We had paid it off in 20 Rs. We had raised 3 children in this house, buried my parents from this house, celebrated every birthday and anniversary in this house. The walls held decades of memories. I could not sell it. I could not leave it. But I could open it. Bring them here, I said. All of them. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. I heard Emily breathing. I heard Lily crying in the background. I heard a man's voice, probably Mark, asking what was happening to Mom. Emily said finally. There are 9 of us. We can't fit in your house. You really have room for yourself. I'll make room, I said. I've made room for bigger things than 9 people. I made room for grief when your father died. I made room for loneliness when all of you left. I will make room for this. Mom, you don't have to do this. You don't have to fix our problems. I looked at my hands. They were still dirty from the den. The dirt was under my fingernails and in the creases of my palms. I thought about the roses. Richa RD's roses. They bloomed every year or whether I tended them or not. They fought through the soil and the weather and the insects. They just kept growing. That was what I had to do. I had to keep growing to bring them, I said again. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying it's going to be comfortable. But you're my family and I will not turn you away. Emily sta root to cry. I heard her sob and try to hold it back. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. I don't know what we would do without you. I know what you would do without me, I said. You would figure it out. You're stronger than you think. But you don't have to figure it out alone. Not while I'm still breathing. I hung up the phone. I sat in the kitchen for a long moment. The light was changing. The sun was getting lower. I could hear a bird singing outside the window. It was a robin. Richa Road used to say that robins were the first sign of spring, that they were stubborn and loud and refused to be ignored. I thought about my son-in-law and his family. They were about to invade my house like an army of stubborn birds. They were about to take over every corner of my quiet life. And I had invited them. I stood up. I walked through the house. I looked at each room. The living room with the worn couch and the floral curtains. The dining room with the table that Richa Road had built himself. The kitchen where I had cooked dinner alone for 7 years. The bedrooms where my children had grown up. The tiny bathroom with the clawfoot tub that leaked. I thought about the money. My savings were modest. My pension was small. I had enough for myself, enough for my own groceries and my own utilities and my own medical bills. I did not have enough for 11 people. I did the math in my head. I had always been good at math. I had been a bookkeeper for 30 years. I knew how many beans would fit in a pot, and how many days a loaf of bread could stretch. The numbers were not in my favor. I walked back to the den. I stood in front of the roses. The red ones were still blooming, defiant and beautiful. I knelt down and touched the soil. It was warm from the sun. I thought about Richa Road. He had been gone 8 years. He had died in his workshop. A heart attack while sanding a cherrywood table. I had found him on the floor, the sandpaper still in his hand. I had not cried at the funeral. I was numb for 3 years. I buried his ashes in a box in my closet because I could not bear to scatter them. Then one day I took the box to the den and opened it and tipped the ashes into the soil around the roses. I was 72 years old and I finally let him go. Now I was 79 and I was letting another wave of chaos into my life. I'm going to need you, I said to the roses. I'm going to need you to remind me why I keep going. The roses did not answer, but the wind blew and the petals rustled, and I took that as a sign that I went back inside. Estai cleaning. I washed dishes. I swept the floors. I made up the spa beds with fresh sheets. I opened the windows to let the air in. I looked at the house and I imagined it full. 9 people in 3 bedrooms. It would be cramped and loud and exhausting. There would be fights over the bathroom. There would be disagreements over meals. There would be no privacy. There would be no peace. My quiet life was about to be shattered. But I also imagined Lily, my granddaughter. I imagined her little face and her little voice. I imagined her laughing in the living room. I imagined her running through the jardin. I imagined her sitting on my lap while I read her stories. That was what I held on to. That was what made me open the door, that they arrived on a Saturday morning. I heard the cars before I saw them. 2 minivans and 1 beat-up sedan. The engines coughed and died. Doors opened and closed. Children cried. Adults argued. I watched from the window. Mark got out first. He was a big man, broad shoulders, balding on top, with a face that always looked like he was about to apologize for something. He came up the walkway with his hands out. "Irene," he said. "I am so sorry. I didn't know where else to go." I hugged him. I have always hugged my son-in-law, even when I did not want to. It is a thing mothers do. We smooth things over. We make peace. We say it will be all right. His mother came next. Vivian. She was a slim woman with dyed black hair and a mouth that turned down at the corners. She looked at my house like she was calculating its value. She did not say thank you. She said, "The driveway is cracked." I did not answer to his father, Thomas, shuffled behind her. He was a quiet man who coughed a lot and had a tremor in his right hand. He carried a duffel bag and a small bird cage with a parakeet inside. The parakeet was green. It did not look happy. His brother, Paul, was tall and handsome in the way that men who have ruined their lives often are. He had a flashy watch on his wrist and a smile that did not reach his eyes. He shook my hand to Harrod. "Thank you, Mrs. Irene. I'm gonna turn things around. I promise." I did not believe him. His sister, Carla, had a neck brace and a limp. She had 3 children under the age of 10. 2 were running around my front yard chasing each other. The third was crying in her arms. She apologized before she even said hello. "I'm sorry. We're just so grateful. We'll find our own place soon." I nodded, but I knew she was lying. My daughter, Emily, was the last to get out of the van. She had Lily by the hand. Lily had her favorite stuffed bunny tucked under her arm, and her eyes were red from crying. Emily looked older than she had looked 3 months ago. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She had dark circles under her eyes. She looked at me like I was a life raft. "Mom," she whispered. "Come in," I said. "Everyone. Come in." They filed through the door like a flood. 9 people in the span of 1 minute. They filled my house with noise and motion and chaos. The children ran everywhere. Paul went straight to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Vivian route arranging the furniture. Carla took the children to the back bedroom and closed the door. Thomas sat in the room chair and fell asleep. Mark stood in the middle of the living room looking lost. Emily came to me. She hugged me. She held on tight. "I love you, Mom. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "There's nothing to be sorry for," I said. "You're here. That's what matters." "Mark sold the house," she said again. "He just sold it, and now we have nothing. They have nothing. Everyone is looking to him, and he can't fix it." "He doesn't have to fix it alone," I said. "We'll fix it together." But even as I said it, I felt the weight pressing down on me. The weight of 9 people in a house meant for 2. The weight of my dwindling savings. The weight of Vivian's cold eyes and Paul's empty promises. The weight of my daughter's fear and my granddaughter's TRS. I looked at the roses through the window. They were still blooming. But I had a terrible feeling that this season, they would be trampled. They came through my door like a flood, and I did not know then that the water would rise so high it would nearly drown me. That first night, I lay in my bed in the small room that had once been my daughter's childhood bedroom. The room was cramped and I could hear Paul snoring in the basement through the floor vents. I could hear Carla's children coughing in the next room. I could hear Lily talking in her sleep on the couch below. I could hear Vivian's sharp voice cutting through the walls, telling Thomas to stop coughing so loud. My house had never been this loud. My house had never been this full. My house had never felt so foreign. I did not sleep that night. I lay awake and listened to the sounds of strangers in my home. That was what they were, mostly. Strangers. I knew their names and their faces, but I did not know their hierarchies. I knew Paul was a gambler. I knew Carla was injured. I knew Vivian was demanding. I knew Thomas was sick. But I did not know what they wanted from me. I did not know how long they intended to stay. I did not know if they would ever leave. That morning came too quickly. I got up at 5 because I could not stand the noise of my own thoughts. I tiptoed through the house, stepping over sleeping bodies on the floor. The living room looked like a refugee camp. Blankets and pillows everywhere. Lily was curled up on the couch, her bunny clutched to her chest. Mark was on the floor next to her, his arm thrown over his face. Emily was in the A-room chair, her head tilted back, her mouth open. They looked exhausted. They looked defeated. They looked like people who had lost everything and had nowhere to go but down. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. The pot was small. It only made 4 cups. I would need to boil water and use instant coffee for the others. I did the math in my head. 11 people. 11 cups of coffee. I had 3 cans of grounds and a jar of instant. It would last a week. Maybe 2 if I stretched it. I poured myself a cup and stood by the window, looking out at the garden. The roses were still there. Still blooming. Still fighting. I took comfort in that. Vivian was the first to wake up. She came into the kitchen wearing a silk robe that looked expensive. Her hair was perfect, even in the morning. She had a way of making everything look easy. She poured herself a cup of coffee without asking. She did not say good morning. She said, "I hope you have something for breakfast besides cereal. Thomas can't eat cereal. It upsets his stomach." I looked at her. I had been looking at her for exactly 1 day, and I already knew I would never look at her with affection. "I have eggs," I said. "And bread. I can make toast." "Toast is fine," she said. "But Thomas likes his eggs scrambled. Not too runny. Not too dry. Just right. And he needs his tea. Yarele grey. With honey, not sugar. I nodded. I did not say that I did not have Earl Grey. I did not say that I did not have honey. I did not say that I had been living alone for 7 years and my pantry reflected the needs of 1 woman, not 11. I just nodded. Paul came up next. He was wearing a suit that looked too expensive for a man with no job. He had a smile on his face that made me want to slap him. "Good morning, Mrs. Irene," he said. "Beautiful day. I have a meeting with some investors this afternoon. I'm going to turn things around. You'll see." I looked at the watch on his wrist. It was gold. It looked new. "Where did you get that watch?" I asked. He looked at his wrist. "Oh, this I've had it for years. It's vintage. Mark told me you sold your watch to pay for your gambling debts." Paul's smile faltered. "That was a different watch. This is a different watch. I have a collection." He laughed, but it was hollow. I knew a lie when I heard one. I had been a bookkeeper for 30 years. I had heard every excuse in the book. I could smell a con from a mile away. Paul was a con. He was handsome and charming and he was lying through his teeth. The children woke up next. Carla's 3 kids came running into the kitchen, screaming and laughing. They were a blur of energy. They knocked over a chair. They spilled cereal on the floor. They fought over the same spoon. Carla hobbled in after them, her neck brace making her movements stiff and awkward. "I'm sorry," she said. "They're just excited. They don't mean to be so loud." "It's fine," I said. "Kids are kids." But it was not fine. The noise was already pounding in my head. The chaos was already overwhelming. I could feel my patience fraying like an old rope. Lily came in last. She was holding her bunny and rubbing her eyes. She looked so small in the chaos. So fragile. "Grandma," she said. "Can I help with breakfast?" I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt all morning. "Of course, sweetheart. You can set the table." She nodded and sta root pulling plates from the cabinet. She was so careful. So precise. She lined each plate up perfectly. She folded the napkins. She counted the forks. She was a little bookkeeper in training. I watched her and I thought about Richard. He would have loved her. He would have taught her how to sand wood and hammer nails. He would have built her a bookshelf. He would have swung her on the tire swing. Mark came in last. He looked tired. He looked like he had not slept. His eyes were red and his shoulders were hunched. He came to me and put his hand on my arm. Irene, he said. I need to talk to you. Privately. I nodded. I left the kitchen and walked to the back porch. Mark followed me. The porch was small and the paint was peeling. I had been meaning to fix it for years. I never got around to it. Mark closed the door behind us and leaned against the railing. He looked like a man carrying a very heavy load. Irene, he said. I know this is a lot. I know I made a terrible mistake. I should have talked to Emily. I should have planned better. I saw my brother in trouble. He owed money to the wrong people. They were threatening him. And my sister couldn't pay her medical bills. She was going to lose her house. I had to do something. You could have said no, I said. You could have helped them in other ways. You could have found a smaller loan. You could have asked for help. You didn't have to sell your house.
Mark's face crumpled.
I know. I know I should have done things differently. But it's done now. The house is gone. The money is gone. I have nothing left but my family and my job in this. He gestured at himself. I am sorry, Irene. I'm so sorry. I looked at him. He was a man who meant well. I could see it in his eyes. He genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. He genuinely believed he was helping. But meaning well was not enough. Meaning well did not pay the bills. Meaning well did not put a roof over my granddaughter's head. Meaning well did not fix the damage he had caused. Mark, I said. I'm not angry at you. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. I'm disappointed because I thought you would protect my daughter. I thought you would protect Lily. Instead, you put them in danger. You put them in a position where they had to come crawling to me. Mark looked away. I know. I failed them. You did. But you can still fix it. You can still rebuild. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take time and work and sacrifice. But you can do it. You have a good heart, Mark. You just have to learn how to use it wisely. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. How do I do that? Start by saying no, I said. Start by setting boundaries. Start by putting your wife and your daughter first. Not your brother. Not your sister. Not your mother. Your wife. Your child. That's where your loyalty belongs.
Ma RK nodded slowly.
I don't know if I can do that. I've been taking care of my family my whole life. It's hard to stop. Nobody is asking you to stop, I said. We're asking you to prioritize. There's a difference. He wiped his eyes. Okay, I'll try. I'll try harder. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe he could change. But I had seen too many men like Mark. Men with good intentions and weak spines. Men who loved everyone so much they loved no one enough. I did not know if he could learn to say no. I did not know if he could learn to set boundaries. But I had to give him a chance. He was my son-in-law. He was my family. And I did not abandon family. That evening, I made dinner. I made a big pot of chili and a loaf of bread. It was not fancy. It was just food. But it filled the table and it filled the stomachs. Everyone sat around the dining room. Vivian sat at the head of the table. She had taken my husband's seat. I did not say anything. I did not have the energy to fight. I just sat at the side and watched them eat. Vivian complained about the chili. Too spicy. Thomas can't eat spicy food. It hurts his stomach. Paul complained about the bread. Store-bought, you couldn't make it from scratch. Carla complained about the children. They don't like beans. They'll just pick at their food and then they'll be hungry later. Mark did not complain. He ate quietly and kept his head down. Emily ate quietly too. Lily was the only one who smiled. Grandma, this is delicious, she said. Thank you for King. I reached across the table and patted her hand. You're welcome, sweetheart. After dinner, I washed the dishes. Emily came to help me. She stood next to me at the sink, drying the plates as I washed them. We did not speak for a while. We just worked. The silence between us was comfortable. It was the silence of two women who had known each other their whole lives. Mom, Emily said finally. Are you okay with all of this? I'm managing. I said that you don't have to manage alone. We're here. Mark and I are here. We can help. Mark is here, I said. But he's also trying to help his family. His mother. His father. His brother. His sister. He's stretched thin. He doesn't have room to help anyone else. Emily sighed. I know. I see it too. He's drowning. He's trying to keep everyone afloat, and he's sinking himself. He needs to learn how to let go, I said. He needs to learn that he can't save everyone. Some people have to save themselves. Like Paul, Emily said. Paul is never going to change. He's always going to gamble. He's always going to lose. Mark has bailed him out 5 times. 5 times, Mom. And every time, Paul goes right back to the tables. And Carla, I said. She's not working. She's not trying to work. She's just sitting in her room with her neck brace and waiting for someone else to fix her problems. Mark loves them, Emily said. He can't help it. He's loyal. He's generous. He's the best man I've ever known. He just doesn't know when to stop. I put my hand on hers. That's a good quality in a man. It really is. But it's also a weakness. And your job, Emily, is to help him find the balance. Not to take over. Not to fix everything. Just to help him see where the line is. Emily nodded. I'm trying. I really am. I looked at her. She looked so tired. So worn. I remembered when she was a little girl. She used to run through the garden and pick flowers for me. She used to sing songs she made up herself. She used to laugh at everything. That little girl was still in there somewhere. She was buried under years of worry and stress, but she was still there. I would find her. I would bring her back. That night, I walked through the house after everyone had gone to bed. I looked at each room. At the scuffed floors. At the worn furniture. At the sagging couch where my daughter and son-in-law slept. At the futon in the basement where Paul had his drinking nights. At the second bedroom where Carla and her 3 children were cramped. At the small room where I had been shoved into my daughter's childhood bedroom. I thought about Richard Road. I thought about the life we had built together. I thought about the roses he had planted. I thought about how he used to say that a good piece of woodwork outlives the carpenter. He had built this house with his own hands. He had painted every room. He had fixed the porch. He had planted the garden. His hands were in the walls. His heart was in the floors. I could feel him everywhere. And I could feel him telling me to hold on. To fight. To not give up. I went to the garden. The roses were glowing in the moonlight. They were so beautiful. So resilient. They had survived everything. They had survived droughts and frosts and aphids. They had survived my grief and my numbness. They had survived 8 years without Richard Road. They were still blooming. Still fighting. I knelt down and touched the petals. They were soft. They were strung. I'm not going to let them destroy this, I whispered. I'm not going to let them take my home. I'm not going to let them take my peace. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But I'm going to find a way. I stood up. I walked back inside. I closed the door behind me and I locked it. But I knew that a locked door was not enough to keep out what was already inside. My house was full of strangers. My savings were vanishing. My patience was wearing thin. And I had no idea how to save myself, let alone everyone else. But I was alive. I was breathing. I was still standing. And as long as I was still standing, I had a chance. 2 months passed. 2 months of chaos and noise and dwindling savings. 2 months of Vivian's complaints and Paul's empty promises and Sarah's TRS. 2 months of watching my daughter age before my eyes. 2 months of holding on to my roses like they were the only thing keeping me sane. The house had become a pressure cooker. Every morning I woke up and wondered what fresh disaster would come through the door. And every morning something did. The first sign that things were spiraling came on a Tuesday. I was in the kitchen making a list of groceries, when I noticed my wallet was lighter than it should have been. I counted the cash. Then I counted it again. $20 missing. I knew exactly how much I had because I was a bookkeeper. I had always known exactly how much I had. I closed my wallet and looked around the kitchen. Paul had been in here earlier, making himself a sandwich. He had smiled at me and said good morning, and then he had disappeared. I did not confront him. I did not have proof. But I knew. I had always known what kind of man he was. The second sign came the following week. I went to the grocery store with $47 to feed 11 people for 7 days. I calculated in my head as I walked through the aisles. Beans, rice, eggs, cheap cuts of meat, vegetables on sale. I had been doing this for 2 months and I had become an expert at stretching $1. But the math was no longer working. My savings were down to the last few $100s. My pension was barely covering the utilities. The food was running out faster than I could buy it. I stood in the aisle, staring at a bag of rice, and I felt something crack inside me. I ran into Margaret, my book club friend. She had silver hair and kind eyes, and she always wore a brooch shaped like a dragonfly. She found me standing in the cereal aisle, staring at a box of sugary cereal that Lily had been begging me to buy for weeks. Irene, she said. How are you? I haven't seen you in months. I heard your daughter moved back in. She did, I said. She and her husband and the children. And his parents and his siblings. Margaret's face changed. She saw the exhaustion in my eyes. She saw the cheap beans in my cart, all of them. In your little house, I nodded. I could not speak. I was afraid I would cry if I opened my mouth. Margaret touched my arm. Irene, let me help. I know some people. There are resources, food banks, senior assistance programs. You don't have to do this alone. I'm fine, I said. I'm managing. You're not fine, Margaret said. You look like you're barely holding on. And that's okay. It's okay to need help. I shook my head. I can't ask for help. They're my family. They're my responsibility. They're not your responsibility, Margaret said firmly. They're adults. They need to stand on their own feet. You've done enough. I looked at my cart, the rice, the beans, the dented cans. I looked at the box of cereal that Lily wanted. I could not afford it. I could not afford anything. I was 80 years old, and I was shopping for groceries like a refugee. I was 80 years old, and I was feeding people who had not lifted a finger to help themselves. I'll figure it out, I said. I always figure it out.
Margaret.
She hugged me. You know where to find me when you're ready to accept help. That night I made dinner. Rice and beans and a small piece of chicken that I stretched by cutting it into tiny shreds. Everyone sat around the table. Vivian was at the head again. She had claimed that seat permanently. She did not even ask. She just sat down and expected everyone to fall in line. I did not argue. I had stopped arguing. Irene, Vivian said. This is the 4th night in a row we've had rice and beans. The children are getting thin. Lily is getting thin. I looked at Lily. She had lost weight. Her cheeks were hollow. Her clothes hung loosely on her small frame. I had noticed. I had noticed every day. But I did not have the money to fix it. I'm doing my best, I said. My voice was flat. I was too tired to defend myself. Your best isn't good enough, Vivian said. You need to accept reality. You can't support all of us on your pension. You need to sell this house. The words landed like a slap. I felt my face go hot. Excuse me? You heard me, Vivian said. Sell this house. Use the money to help everyone get back on their feet. You could have a small appartement. Something manageable. Something you can afford on your own. And the rest of us could finally have a fresh start. Mark put down his fork. Mom, this isn't the time. Mark, I'm saying what everyone is thinking, Vivian said. We're all suffering. We're all cramped. We're all eating scraps. If Irene sold the house, we could all get our own places. Everyone could start fresh. I looked around the table. Paul was nodding. Carla was staring at her plate. Thomas was coughing. Emily had gone pale. Lily was looking at me with wide, frightened eyes. They were all waiting for my answer. I'm not selling my house, I said. My voice was quiet. But it was firm. Then what's your plan? Vivian demanded. Are you just going to keep us all in this house forever, slowly watching us all starve? Is that your solution? She's trying. Emily said. Her voice was shaking. She's doing everything she can. You don't get to talk to her like that. I get to talk however I want, Vivian said. I'm the mother of the man who's been supporting everyone. Mark works construction. He gives half his paycheck to Irene. Paul is rooting a new business. Zara is healing. We're all trying. But Irene is just sitting here in her dead husband's house pretending everything is fine. The silence was so loud it hurt my ears. I looked at Vivian. I looked at her black hair and her thin mouth and her eyes that had been calculating since the day she arrived. I felt something snap inside me. Something that had been holding on for 2 months. Something that had been patient and forgiving and understanding. Snapped. Get out of my seat. I said that. Vivian blinked. Excuse me. Get out of my husband's seat. Right now. Vivian's face flushed red. She opened her mouth to speak. Mark touched her arm. Mom. Please. Just move. Vivian stood up. She pushed her chair back with a loud scrape. She walked around the table to the other side. She sat down next to Thomas, her face tight and angry. I stayed in my seat. I looked at the table. At the half-empty plates. At the faces of the people I had taken into my home. At the family that had descended on me like a SWARM. I'm going to tell you something, I said. I'm 80 years old. I've been on this EARTH longer than most of you. I've buried my husband. I've buried my parents. I've buried friends. I have survived cancer. I have survived a stroke. I have survived the loss of my savings and the loss of my health. And the loss of my youth. And I am still standing. I looked at Vivian. I looked at her. Harrod. You walk into my house. You eat my food. You sleep in my beds. You use my water. You leave my lights on. And you tell me I'm not enough. You tell me my home isn't enough. You tell me I should sell the last thing my husband left me. Vivian did not answer. Her face was red. Her hands were trembling. I was a bookkeeper for 30 years, I said. I balanced books for a company that made millions. I caught fraud that saved them 6 figures. I know numbers. I know budgets. I know exactly how much it costs to keep all of you alive. And I know exactly how much you're all bringing in. I turned to Paul. You told me you were rooting a new business. What business? Paul shifted in his chair. It's a consulting firm. I'm meeting with investors. Did you meet with investors yesterday? Yes. Did you meet with them the day before? No. Did you meet with them at all this week? Paul did not answer. His hands were on the table. I noticed that his flashy watch was gone. I noticed the empty spot on his wrist. What happened to your watch? I asked. Paul covered his wrist with his other hand. I lost it. You sold it, I said. You sold it for cash and you lost it at a poker game. I found the receipt in the trash. Mark turned to his brother. Paul, is that true? It was one time, Paul said. I had a good hand. I was going to win. You gambled away the money I gave you for rent, Mark said. That money was supposed to help Irene. I was going to turn it around, Paul said. It was just a bad run. I'm telling you. It's going to change. I turned to Carla. You told me you couldn't work because of your neck. Did you know that my friend Marga Rhett knows a lawyer who does pro bono work for CAR accident victims? Did you know you could be eligible for a settlement? Marga Rhett asked me if you wanted a referral. I said yes. The lawyer called you 3 times. You never returned the calls. Carla looked at her lap. I didn't think it would help. Would it help if it paid for your children's school supplies? I asked. Would it help if it paid for their shoes? Would it help if it paid for their cereal with marshmallows? Carla cried. She put her face in her hands and cried. Her 3 children looked at her with frightened faces. I felt a pang of guilt. But I did not stop. I could not stop. I had been silent for too long. I looked at Mark. You sold your house. Without telling Emily. Without asking her. Without planning for where you would go. You made a decision that affected 6 people, and you made it alone. Mark's face was white. Irene. I thought I was doing the right thing. Meaning well is not the same as doing right, I said. I told myself that for years. I told myself that about you. But meaning well does not put food on the table. Meaning well does not keep a roof over a child's head. Meaning well does not fix a leaky roof. I have been meaning well my whole life. And look where I am. Rice and beans and no cereal with marshmallows. I pushed back my chair. I stood up. I looked at every single face around the table. Your family is in crisis. My family is in crisis. This is not a time for blaming. It is not a time for fighting. It is a time for figuring out what to do. But I am not selling my house. I am not leaving my home. My husband built this house. He built every bookshelf and every cabinet and every window frame. His hands are in the wood. And I am not leaving his hands. I walked out of the dining room. I walked to the garden. I stood in front of my husband's roses and I breathed. The air was cool and sharp. The roses were still blooming. The red ones were the strongest. They had survived everything. I knelt down and touched the soil. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Lily. She had followed me. She had her bunny in her arms. She was crying. Grandma, she said. Are you okay? I turned around. I knelt down in front of her. I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm just tired. Grandma, Lily said. When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a house. A big house. With a garden. And you're going to have a room all to yourself. And a window seat. And a tire swing. I hugged her. I held her tight. Her little body was so warm. She smelled like cheap shampoo and little girl sweat. I held on to her, and I did not let go. Lily, I said. You are the reason I get up in the morning. I know, she said. That's why you have to keep going. I pulled back and looked at her face. Her cheeks were wet. Her eyes were red. But there was something fierce in them. Something that reminded me of myself. Something that reminded me that I had not given up yet. I would not give up. Not while she was still fighting that night. I could not sleep. I lay in my bed and read at the ceiling. The house was quiet. Everyone had gone to bed. But my mind was spinning. I thought about the money. The dwindling savings. The empty pantry. I thought about Vivian's cold eyes and Paul's lies and Carla's helplessness. I thought about Mark's guilt and Emily's exhaustion. I thought about Lily. About her promise. About her fierce little heart. I got up at midnight. I went to the kitchen and made tea. I sat at the table and read at the wall. My hands were shaking. I was angry. I was sad. I was terrified. I was 80 years old and I had nothing left but a house and a garden and a granddaughter who believed in me. That I thought about Richard Road. He would have known what to do. He would have been calm. He would have been steady. He would have fixed everything with his hands. But Richard Road was gone. And I was alone. I was alone with 9 people who were draining me dry. I was alone with a family that was tearing itself apart. I was alone with a woman who wanted my house and a man who could not say no. I looked at the calendar on the wall. It was the end of the month. My pension check was coming in 2 days. It would cover the bills but be a rely. I needed something else. I needed a plan. I needed a miracle. I looked at my hands. They were old hands. Wrinkled. Arthritic. They had held ledgers and calculators and birth certificates and death certificates. They had raised 3 children and buried a husband, and kept a garden alive. They had found justice before. They could find it again. Tomorrow, I said to myself. Tomorrow I start fighting back. I drank my tea. I went back to bed. But I did not sleep. I lay awake and I made plans. I thought about ledgers and old records and evidence I had kept for 30 years. I thought about a fraud I had uncovered in Harlinglingwu. I thought about the shell company and the payments and the proof that was still sitting in a box in my closet. I thought about justice. About revenge. About doing what was right. I thought about my granddaughter and her promise. I thought about the roses and their resilience. I thought about Richard Road and his hands. And I smiled. In the darkness I smiled. Because I knew what I had to do. I knew how to fix this. I knew how to save myself. And I knew it was going to be beautiful. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I had not slept. My mind was too full of numbers and names and old memories. I lay in bed for a few minutes, listening to the house settle around me, the creaks and groans of the wood, the distant sound of Paul snoring in the basement. The soft murmur of Carle's children in the next room. I had grown used to the noise. But I had not grown used to the wait. I got up at 4. The house was dark. I moved quietly through the kitchen, careful not to wake anyone. I made a cup of tea and sat at the table. The calendar on the wall still said the end of the month. My pension check was coming in 2 days. 2 days. I had enough food to last 3 more meals. After that, I would be feeding 11 people with nothing but hope that I put down my tea. I walked to the closet in the hallway. It was the same closet where I had stored Richa RD's winter coats and my old sewing machine, and the boxes of photographs I never looked at. I pulled open the door and reached up to the top shelf. My fingers found a dusty box. I dragged it down. It was heavy. I carried the box to the kitchen table. I opened it. Inside were ledgers. Old ledgers from my bookkeeping days. I had kept them as souvenirs. A reminder of who I used to be. The paper was yellowed. The ink was faded. But the numbers were still there. I opened the first ledger. It was from 1992. I had been 45 years old. I remembered that year. Richa Road had been alive. My children had been young. I had been working at the manufacturing company, balancing books and catching mistakes. I had loved that job. I had loved the precision of it. The CLA righty. The way everything added up if you did it right. I turned the pages. I found the section I was looking for. The fraudulent payments. The shell company. I had discovered them in Erlinglingwu, just before I was let go. The new owners had brought in their own accountants. I had been told to clean out my desk. But before I left, I had done a final audit. I had found the discrepancy. A pattern of small payments to a company that did not exist. Payments that added up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. That I had reported it. I had written a detailed report and handed it to the new owners. They had thanked me and told me not to worry about it. I had worried about it. I had kept copies. I had kept every piece of evidence. I had tucked it away in this box and I had forgotten about it. Until last night. I pulled out the copies. The papers were yellowed and fragile. I handled them carefully. I spread them across the kitchen table. The shell company was called Aurora Holdings. It had been registered in Delaware. It had no employees, no office, no business. It existed only to receive payments. Payments from my old company. Payments that had been routed to someone's personal account. That I read through the papers. The payments had continued after I left. They had continued for years. The last payment was dated Erlinglingwu. That was 2 years ago. The shell company was still active. I had a name. I had an address. I had a paper trail. I had proof of fraud on a significant scale. I sat back in my chair. My hands were shaking. But it was not fear. It was excitement. It was the thrill of finding something I had lost. The thrill of realizing I was not powerless after all. That I heard footsteps in the hallway. Emily Appe read in the kitchen doorway. She was still in her pajamas. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were tired. Mom, what are you doing up so early? Couldn't sleep, I said. Come sit with me. She shuffled to the table and sat down. She saw the ledgers. She saw the papers. She frowned. What is all this? Old work, I said. From when I was a bookkeeper. Mom, you haven't worked in 15 years. Why are you looking at that now? I took a breath. I had not told anyone about my discovery. Not Emily. Not Mark. Not Lily. I had kept it to myself because I was not sure if it would lead anywhere. But sitting there with my daughter's tired eyes on me, I knew I had to tell her to. Emily, I said. I found something. Something that might change everything. She sat up straighter. What do you mean? I told her. I told her about the fraud I had uncovered in Erlinglingwu. I told her about the shell company. I told her about the payments that had continued for years. I told her about the proof I had kept in a box in my closet. I told her I could pursue it. I could file a report. I could get the money I was owed. Emily Sta read at me. Her mouth was open. Mom. That's huge. That's millions of dollars. Hundreds of thousands, I said. Maybe more. I don't know the exact amount until I go through all the records. But it's significant. Mom, Emily said. Why didn't you do this years ago? I looked at my hands. I was afraid. I was an old woman. I didn't have the energy or the resources to fight a corporation. And I didn't have all the proof. I had my notes. But I didn't know the payments continued. I didn't know the shell company was still active. I only found out last night when I sta route going through the public records. Public records, Emily said. How did you find that? I was a bookkeeper, I said. I know how to find things. Emily laughed. It was a shaky laugh. A laugh of disbelief. Mom, this is incredible. We have to do something. We have to tell someone. I'm going to, I said. But I need help. I need a lawyer. Someone who can take this case. Someone who believes in justice. Emily nodded. We'll find one. We'll figure it out. Not yet, I said. I need to gather more evidence first. I need to go through all the records. I need to make sure I have everything I need before I go to a lawyer. Can I help? Emily asked. Not yet, I said. I need to do this alone for now. It's too important to mess up. Emily looked at me. She saw something in my eyes. Something she had not seen in a long time. Hope that okay, Mom, she said. But you're not doing this alone forever. I'm here. I'm with you. I reached across the table and took her hand. I know you agree. That's why I'm going to win. Over the next week, I spent every sparring moment in the kitchen going through the ledgers. I made notes. I calculated totals. I traced the payments. I documented everything. The house was still chaos. Vivian still complained. Paul still gambled. Carla still did nothing. But I did not CARE anymore. I had a purpose. I had a plan. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen when Lily came in. She was CARing her bunny. She had a piece of paper in her hand. Grandma, she said, I made you a picture. I looked at it. It was a drawing of a garden. A garden full of roses. Red roses. And in the middle of the garden was a woman with white hair and a big smile. Is that me? I asked. That Lily nodded. You're the rose lady. You're the one who keeps everything alive. I hugged her. Lily, you are the most wonderful granddaughter in the whole world. I know, she said. That's why you have to keep going. She ran off to play. I looked at the drawing. I looked at the roses. I looked at the woman with the white hair and the big smile. She was me. The woman who kept everything alive. The woman who refused to give up. That the next day, I called Margaret. I told her everything. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Irene, you are a force of nature. I'm 80 years old, I said. I'm tired. But I'm not finished. Margaret laughed. I have a friend. A lawyer. His name is Daniel Chun. He's young and hungry, and he takes on cases like this. I'll give you his number. Daniel Chun came to my house the following afternoon. He was a young man, perhaps 35, with a sharp suit and sharper eyes. He walked through my house and looked at the chaos with a calm expression. He did not flinch. He did not judge. He just sat down at the kitchen table and looked at my ledgers. Show me. He said that I showed him everything. The ledgers. The notes. The public records. The paper trail. He read through it all. He asked questions. He took notes. He did not smile. He did not frown. He just absorbed the information. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. This is real, he said. This is serious. This is fraud on a significant scale. The company owes you. They owe you back pay and penalties and interest. This could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. I did not flinch. I know, I said. Daniel looked at me. Why didn't you pursue this years ago? Fear, I said. And lack of evidence. I had my notes. But I didn't have the full picture. I only found the full picture this week, when I checked the public records. Check the public records, Daniel repeated. You did that yourself. I was a bookkeeper, I said. I know how to find things. Daniel smiled. It was the first time he had smiled since he arrived. Irene, I'm going to take this case. I'm going to fight for you. And I'm going to win. He stood up. He shook my hand. He took the copies of the evidence and put them in his briefcase. I'll be in touch. He left. I sat at the kitchen table. I looked at the ledgers. I looked at the notes. I looked at the drawing Lily had given me. The rose lady. The one who kept everything alive. I had done it. I had taken the first step. I had fought back. And I had not even broken a sweat. I was not done. But I was no longer drowning. I was swimming. And soon I would be flying. That night I walked through the house. Vivian was in the living room watching television. Paul was in the basement making phone calls. Sarah was in her room with her children. Mark and Emily were on the couch. Lily was sleeping next to them. I looked at all of them. I felt something shift inside me. I was no longer afraid. I walked to the garden. The roses were still blooming. I knelt down and touched the petals. Richard, I whispered. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to fight. And I'm going to win. The wind blew. The roses rustled. I stood up and walked back inside. I had a battle to win. And I was ready. Daniel Chin called me on a Friday morning. I was in the garden, pulling weeds. The sun was warm on my back and my hands were covered in dirt. I had been thinking about Richard. I had been thinking about the roses. I had been thinking about how strange it was that my life had changed so much in just a few months. I had been thinking about how I had gone from a quiet widow to a woman with a secret plan. I heard the phone ringing through the open kitchen window. I stood up. My knees cracked. I walked inside and picked it up. Hello, Irene, Daniel said. His voice was different. Sharper. More urgent. I have news. The investigation is moving faster than I expected. I filed the report, and they've already sta route looking into the shell company. The payments are being traced. I think we're going to have a result sooner than we thought. I sat down on the kitchen chair. My heart was pounding. How soon? A few weeks, maybe less. The evidence is strong. The paper trail is clear. They don't have a leg to stand on. This is going to be a settlement. And it's going to be significant. I closed my eyes. Few weeks. After all these years, a few weeks was all it would take. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for everything. Thank me when we win, he said. I'll call you with updates. He hung up. I sat at the kitchen table and read at the wall. My hands were trembling. I had been holding on to this secret for weeks. I had been carrying the weight of it alone. Now it was real. Now it was happening. I was going to get my justice. Emily came into the kitchen. She saw my face. Mom, what happened? I looked at her. My daughter. The one who had trusted me. The one who had come to me when she had nowhere else to go. Emily, I said, I need to tell you something. I told her about the phone call. I told her about Daniel. I told her about the investigation. I told her about the settlement that was coming. Emily listened. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. When I finished, she burst into tears. Mom, she said. This is everything. This is the answer to everything. We can get our own place. We can get back on our feet. We can have a future. We can, I said. But I need you to keep this secret for now. I'm not telling anyone else. Not Mark. Not Vivian. Not Paul. Not Carla. Nobody. Why not? Emily asked. Because I need to see who they really are, I said. I need to see what they do when they think there's no way out. I need to know if they're worth saving. Emily nodded slowly. She understood. I had always taught her to be careful. To trust but verify. To watch what people did, not what they said. She had been watching for months. She had seen what I had seen. She knew the truth about the family she had married into. I understand, Mom. I'll keep your secret. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I had to act like nothing had changed. I had to keep making rice and beans. I had to keep listening to Vivian's complaints. I had to keep watching Paul lie and Carla cry and Mark apologize. I had to pretend I was still the same old woman I had always been. But I was not the same. I was waiting. I was watching. And I was running. Paul came to me one evening. He was wearing a new jacket. It looked expensive. Irene, he said. I've got a lead. A business opportunity. It's going to change everything. I just need a small loan. A few $1,000s. I'll pay you back double. I looked at him. His eyes were bright. His smile was wide. He was so handsome. So charming. So full of lies. I don't have a few $1,000s, I said. You know that. Your pension, he said. You could borrow against it. Just a small amount. I promise I'll pay it back. I shook my head. I can't, Paul. I'm sorry. His face changed. The charm vanished. His eyes hardened. You can't or you won't, both, I said. He walked away. He did not say thank you. He did not apologize. He just walked away. I watched him go and I felt something shift inside me. He was not a good man. He was a man who took and never gave anything back. He was a man who would drain me dry and walk away without a backway RD glance. Vivian came to me the next morning. She had a cup of tea in her hand. She sat down at the kitchen table across from me. Irene, she said, I've been thinking about what I said the other night. About selling the house. I haven't changed my mind, I said. I'm not selling. I know, she said. I was wrong to suggest it. This is your home. Your husband's home. I understand that now. I looked at her. I had not expected this. She had been cold and calculating since the day she arrived. She had never apologized for anything. Now she was sitting in front of me, telling me I was right. It did not feel genuine. It felt like a setup. What do you want, Vivian? I asked. She looked down at her tea. I want us to be family. I want us to get along. I want to help. I know I've been difficult. I know I've said things I shouldn't have. But I'm trying. I really am. I looked at her. I saw the wrinkles around her eyes. The gray in her hair. The exhaustion in her shoulders. She was old. She was SCA red. She was trying to hold her family together. I could understand that. I had been there myself. Thank you, Vivian, I said. I appreciate that. She smiled. It was a thin smile. A practiced smile. But it was a smile. I tried to believe it was genuine. I tried to believe that she had changed. But something in my gut told me to be careful. Came to me that afternoon. She was crying. Her children were playing in the backyard road. She sat down on the porch steps next to me. Irene, she said. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I know I've been useless. I know I haven't done anything to help. But I'm going to change. I'm going to call the lawyer. I'm going to fight for my settlement. I'm going to get better. I looked at her. Her face was wet. Her hands were trembling. She looked so broken. So defeated. Sarah, I said. You are not useless. You are a mother. You are a survivor. You can do this. Can I? She asked. I don't know if I can. I've been so SCA red. I've been so ashamed. I don't know how to fix my life. You strt by taking one step, I said. Just one. Call the lawyer tomorrow. That's all you have to do. One call. She nodded. She wiped her eyes. Okay, I'll do it. I'll call him tomorrow. I watched her walk back inside. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she could change. But I had been burned before. I had believed in people who had let me down. I had believed in Paul. I had believed in Mark. I had believed in Vivian. And they had all disappointed me. But I had to keep trying. That was what Richa Road would have wanted. That was what I had to do. Keep trying. Keep hoping. Keep fighting. The phone rang again that night. Daniel again. Irene, he said. I have more good news. The company has agreed to settle. They're offering $750,000 RS. I could not breathe. 750,000, yes. It's all going to be in your account within 2 weeks. You did it, Irene. You won. I sat down on the floor. I could not stand. My legs had given out. I sat on the cold kitchen floor, and I cried. I cried for Richa Road. I cried for myself. I cried for all the years I had been afraid. I cried for all the times I had been told I was not enough. I cried because I had proven them all wrong. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you, Daniel. Thank me when you have the money, he said. I'll send you the paperwork. He hung up. I sat on the floor for a long time. The house was quiet. Everyone was asleep. I was alone with my victory. I had won. I had beaten the odds. I had fought back and I had won. But I still had one more battle to fight. I still had to face the family that had invaded my home. I still had to decide what to do with my money. I still had to decide who was worth saving and who was not. I still had to decide if I was going to be a woman of justice or a woman of mercy. I stood up. I walked to the jardin. The roses were still blooming. The red ones were the strongest. Richard's roses. They had survived everything. And so had I. I was not done yet. But I was no longer afraid that I knelt down and touched the soil. Richard, I said. I did it. I won. And now I'm going to show them what a woman with nothing can do when she decides to fight back. The wind blew. The roses rustled. I stood up and walked back inside. Tomorrow I would tell them the truth. Tomorrow everything would change. The money hit my account on a Wednesday. I checked the balance at the bank. STA ring at the screen like it was a foreign language. $750,000 Rs. For a woman who had been eating rice and beans, who had been patching the roof with a TA-RP, who had been buying dented cans at the supermarket. It was an unfathomable sum. I walked out of the bank in a daze. The sun was bright and the air was warm. I felt like I was floating. That I went home. The house was empty. Everyone was at work or school. I walked through each room slowly, looking at the scuffed floors and worn furniture and sagging couch. I looked at the small room where I had been sleeping, the room that had once been my daughter's childhood bedroom. I looked at the basement where Paul had been staying, the futon he slept on, the empty bottles he left behind. I looked at the second bedroom where Carla and her children had been crammed together, the toys scattered on the floor, the crayon marques on the walls. I looked at the living room where Mark and Emily and Lily had been sleeping on the floor, the blankets and pillows that had become their bed. This house was not built for 9 people. It was built for 2 people, a husband and a wife. And I had been sharing it with strangers for 3 months. Strangers who had taken my food and my space and my peace. Strangers who had tried to take my home. That I walked to the jardin. The roses were blooming. The red ones were the strongest. I knelt down and touched the petals. Richard, I said. I did it. I won. And now I have to decide what to do with it. The roses did not answer. But I felt his presence. I felt him telling me to be wise, to be kind, to be just. I felt him telling me that money was not the answer to everything. That family was more important than revenge. That I had to choose the right path, not the easy one. I stood up. I walked back inside. I had a decision to make. And I had to make it soon. That night, I called a family meeting. Everyone gathered in the dining room. Vivian sat at the head of the table. I did not tell her to move. I stood by the kitchen door. I looked at all of them. Mark was tired. Emily was nervous. Lily was holding her bunny. Paul was fidgeting. Carla was pale. Thomas was coughing. Vivian was impatient. I have news, I said. I have been working on something for the past 2 months. I didn't tell anyone because I needed to be sure it would happen. Now it has happened. I told them everything. The ledgers. The shell company. The fraud. The settlement. The $750,000 Rs. The silence was absolute. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Vivian spoke. Her voice was sharp and cold. You got what from where? From the company I used to work for, I said. They had been committing fraud. I found the evidence 30 years ago. I kept it. I never pursued it because I was afraid. But I'm not afraid anymore. Vivian's face went pale. Then it went red. So you've been sitting on a fortune this whole time. And we've been eating rice and beans and you let us suffer. I didn't know until 2 months ago, I said. I found the full evidence 2 months ago. I've been working on it ever since. You could have told us, Vivian said. You could have read. I could have, I said. But I wanted to be sure. And I also wanted to teach a lesson about secrets and assumptions. You assumed I was powerless. You assumed I was weak. You assumed I would just take your abuse and hand over my house. And I let you assume that. I let you think I was nothing. Because I was waiting. Vivian Sta read at me. You were waiting for revenge. No, I said. I was waiting for justice. There's a difference. Revenge is about hurting other people. Justice is about making things right. I want to make things right. Paul stood up. His face was twisted. $750,000 Rs. And you're just going to keep it all, you're not going to remarry your family. We've been living like animals in this house. And you've been sitting on a fortune, Paul. Mark said sharply. Sit down. Don't tell me to sit down, Paul shouted. She's been lying to us. All of us. She let us sta Irv. She let my children sta Irv. And now she's sitting there with her little fortune and she's telling us about justice. I looked at Paul. I had known he would react like this. I had known he would turn on me. That was why I had kept the secret. I needed to see who they really were. And now I was seeing it. Paul, I said calmly, you have been gambling with money that wasn't yours. You have been lying to me. You have been stealing from me. $20 Rs went missing from my wallet. Then 40. I didn't confront you because I wanted to see if you would confess. You never did. You never will. Paul's face went white. That's not true. I never took anything. Mark, I said. Check your brother's jacket. The one in the basement closet. Inside the pocket. Mark looked at me. Then he looked at his brother. He got up and walked to the basement. He came back a few minutes later. He was holding a wad of cash. It was in his jacket, Mark said. Hundreds of Rs. Paul asked Ruth to speak. Mark held up his hand. Don't say anything. I don't want to hear it. Arale was crying. She put her face in her hands.
Irene, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know he was stealing from you. I didn't know any of this. You didn't want to know, I said. That's the problem. You've been hiding in your room, refusing to return the lawyer's calls. You've been letting other people solve your problems. And you've been letting your children see that helplessness is acceptable. That's not okay, Arale. That's not okay at all. She cried Harider. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down. I had to be honest. I had to be firm. I looked at Vivian. And you. You came into my house and you tried to take it from me. You demanded. You criticized. You belittled. You tried to make me feel small. But I am not small. I have never been small. I was just quiet. There is a difference between quiet and weak. Vivian did not answer. She was pale. Her hands were shaking. I looked at Mark. You have a big heart. That is not a bad thing. But you need to learn how to say no. You need to learn how to say no to the people you love. Because saying yes to everyone will destroy you. Mark's face was white.
Irene, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I know you are, I said. And I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to keep living like this. I looked at all of them. I am giving you all 2 months to get out of my house. Not because I want to hurt you. Because this house was not built for 9 people. It was built for 2 people. And I am ready to live in it alone again. I need my space. I need my peace. I need my life back. Vivian opened her mouth. I held up my hand. I am also giving you a gift, I said. I am paying off the debts that Mark incurred to help his family. I am paying off Paul's gambling debts. I am paying off Arale's medical bills. I am paying off Mark's mortgage on the house he sold. I am giving all of you a fresh start. But not a new house. Not a new life. Just a clean slate. What you do with that clean slate is up to you. Paul sta Ruth to speak. I held up my hand again. Paul, I have arranged for you to go to a treatment program. I have paid for it for 3 months. You will go or you will not receive another cent from me. He sta read at me. His jaw was tight. But he did not argue. Carla, I said. I have paid for the lawyer. He will work on your case. You will get the settlement you deserve. You will get the medical treatment you need. But you have to do the work. You have to return the calls. You have to show up. She nodded. She was still crying. I will. I promise. Mark, I said. I'm going to help you and Emily find a new place. A small place. Something you can afford on your own. But you have to stop bailing out your family. You have to set boundaries. You have to put your wife and daughter first. Mark nodded. I understand. I'll do better. And Lily, I said. I looked at my granddaughter. She had been quiet through the whole thing. Her bunny was clutched to her chest. Her eyes were wide. Lily, you are going to be okay. You are going to have a new home. A new room. A new bed. And I am going to visit you every single Sunday. Lily smiled. Grandma, you're a hero. No, sweethearty, I said. I'm just someone who decided to fight back. Help others fight back too, she said. That's what heroes do. I pulled her close. You're right. That's what heroes do. After everyone went to bed, I walked through the house one last time. I looked at the empty rooms, the quiet corners, the fading light. I thought about Richer Road. I thought about the life we had built together. I thought about the roses he had planted. I thought about how far I had come. That I walked to the garden. The roses were glowing in the moonlight. I knelt down and touched the petals. I did it, I whispered. I did it, Richer Road. I fought back. And now I'm going to help them fight back too. That's what heroes do. Over the next 2 months, the house slowly emptied. Paul went to the treatment program. I drove him there myself. He did not speak during the drive. He just read out the window with a hollow look on his face. When we arrived, he turned to me. His eyes were red. Irene, he said. I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve your help. But I'm going to get better. I promise. I looked at him. I had heard promises from Paul before. But something in his voice was different. Something that sounded like genuine shame. I hope you do, Paul. I really hope you do. He nodded. He got out of the car. He walked through the doors of the treatment center without looking back. I watched him go. I did not know if he would succeed. But I had given him a chance. That was all I could do. Sarale went to the lawyer. Daniel Chung called me a week later. Irene, he said. Sarale came in. She signed all the paperwork. She's going to get her settlement. It's not as big as yours, but it's enough to get her back on her feet. She's going to be okay. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Thank you, Daniel. For everything. Thank you for introducing me to her, he said. She needed someone to believe in her. Mark and Emily found a small apartment. It was a 2-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. It had a small yard with a single tree. No tire swing. But Lily did not complain. She was just happy to have a room of her own. I helped them move. I ride boxes. I unpacked dishes. I hung curtains. I did not complain. I was just happy to see my daughter and granddaughter have a home again. Vivian and Thomas moved to a senior community. It was a modest place with small apartments and red dining rooms. I visited them once, after they had settled in. Vivian looked older than I remembered. Softer. She opened the door and stood aside to let me in. Irene, she said. Thank you for coming. I stepped inside. The apartment was small but clean. Thomas was sitting in an A-room chair, watching television. He waved at me. I waved back. Irene, Vivian said. I want to apologize. For everything. I was terrible to you. I tried to take you home. I treated you like you were nothing. And you were never nothing. You were everything. You saved my family. I looked at her. She was crying. It was the first time I had seen her truly vulnerable. Vivian, I said. I forgive you. We all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from them. She nodded. She hugged me. It was an awkward hug. We were not the hugging type. But it meant something. It meant we had both grown. The final day came. The last of the family left. I stood at the door and watched them drive away. The house was quiet. It was the quietest it had been in months. I walked through the rooms. The floors were scuffed. The walls were marked. The furniture was worn. But it was my house again. My home. The place where I had raised my children. The place where Richer Road had built his dreams. I walked to the garden. The roses were still blooming. They had survived everything. The chaos. The noise. The intruders. The neglect. They were still there, red and proud and defiant. I knelt down and touched the soil. Richer Road, I said. It's over. They're gone. It's just me and the roses now. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Emily was standing at the edge of the garden. Lily was with her. They had come back. Mom, Emily said. We just wanted to say goodbye. Properly. I stood up. I walked to them. I hugged Emily. I hugged Lily. I held them both close. Grandma, Lily said. I'm going to miss you so much. I'm going to miss you too, sweetheart, I said. But I'll see you on Sunday. Remember every Sunday. She nodded. She was holding something. A small piece of paper. She handed it to me. I made you this. It's a map. To my new house. So you can find me. I unfolded the paper. It was a crayon drawing. A little house with a tree and a girl with a bunny. Underneath in wobbly letters it said Lily's house. I smiled. I held it ruefully. Thank you, Lily. I will treasure this forever. Emily hugged me again. Mom. Thank you. For everything. For taking us in. For fighting for us. For never giving up. You're my daughter, I said. I would never give up on you. She left. I stood in the garden and watched them go. The car de sape read down the street. I was alone. Truly alone. For the first time in months, I had no one to take care of. No one to feed. No one to clean up after. No one to argue with. It was just me. I went inside. I made tea. I sat in the living room. The silence was strange. It was almost too quiet. I had grown used to the noise. The chaos. The constant movement. Now I had nothing but the sound of my own breathing. I thought about the money. The settlement. The $750,000 RS. I had paid off everyone's debts. I had helped them start over. I had kept enough for myself. Enough to live comfortably. Enough to fix the leaky roof and repair the porch and maybe even buy a new couch. But I did not want a new couch. I wanted my old couch. The one Richard and I had picked out together. The one with the worn cushions and the faded fabric. I thought about the future. About what came next. I was 80 years old. I had survived cancer. I had survived a stroke. I had survived a house full of strangers. I had survived losing my husband and my savings and my peace of mind. I was still standing. I was still fighting. I was still blooming. I walked back to the garden. I looked at the roses. The red ones were the strongest. Richard had always said red roses were the fighters. He had always said they survived everything. I knelt down and touched one of the petals. It was soft and warm. It was alive. I thought about Lily. Her promise to buy me a house with a window seat and a tire swing. Her fierce little heart. Her belief in me. That was what I held on to. That was what made me get up in the morning. That was what made me keep going. I made a decision. I was going to start a foundation. A scholarship fund. For women who wanted to go back to school. For women who needed a second chance. For women like me. Women who had been told they were not enough. Women who had been pushed down and stepped on and forgotten. I was going to help them fight back. I was going to be their rose. Their fighter. Their reminder that it was never too late to bloom. I thought about Richard. About his hands. About the wood he had saved and the furniture he had built. About the house he had left me. I thought about the roses. About how they had survived everything. I thought about the years I had spent alone. The years I had spent grieving. The years I had spent being quiet and small and forgotten. I was not quiet anymore. I was not small. I was not forgotten. I walked back inside. I sat down at the kitchen table. I wrote down my plans. The foundation. The scholarship fund. The women I wanted to help. The lives I wanted to change. I wrote until my hand ached. I wrote until the sun went down. I wrote until I had a plan. The next morning, I woke up early. I made coffee. I walked to the garden. The roses were still blooming. The red ones were still fighting. I smiled. I was 80 years old, and I had never been stronger. Strength isn't about how loud you roar. It's about how long you bloom. And I'm still blooming. Rose, do you believe that it's never too late to fight for what's yours? Drop a comment below and tell me your story. I read every single one. If this story reminded you of someone who needs to hear that they're not alone, please like and share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of women who refuse to break. We're in this together.